Actually, one comment about, we already collect a lot of data, but one of the things, maybe I missed it, that the thermo camera, it could be, included in that, where it could be detected the earlier mastitis, for example, where the other only sometimes heat up a little bit compared to the body temperature. Is that something you're thinking about? It could be coming in the future or already exist?
Yeah, I particularly I haven't used thermal cameras yet. The ones we would like to have, they are expensive. They have higher resolution, and the ones who I've seen people playing, I actually we have just played the handheld thermal cameras, and they're very noisy and they suffer a lot with the environmental effect on the maps of the temperature. And usually when you go to those single points of max, mean, and average temperature of the animal, it's a very noisy data. And so when you look to correlations with body core temperature or rectal temperature, they're not great. And because the skin may be just like the surface of the animal, it's super warm because whatever reason, sunlight, and not necessarily represent that. So I guess the way to analyze those thermal images are not just looking to the single point. So we haven't played with those, but they have potential, and people are exploring those. And yeah.
Okay, to the list of questions, the first one's for you, Jeff. Does heat stress in dry cows have a cumulative effect on the mammary gland from one lactation to the other? So I assume it's repeated heat stress during gestation or the dry period.
So in terms of the cow, we don't have a lot of information, but it does not seem that she is going to be negatively impacted in the subsequent lactation if she's not heat stressed again. But we don't have a lot of information. But what we have, just tracking animals to their next lactation, we don't see differences.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very impressive data set, by the way. We did something similar a number of years ago on Life Start, so looking at the effects of early life intervention on calves. So I imagine this one was a considerable effort. So really cool data.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, second question here. It's to you, Lance. How do you explain the zinc metal effect in the gut cells? How can a zinc source would be different than the other to increase integrity and reduce leaky gut, let's say?
Well, that's a, can you hear me? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I think there's some evidence suggesting that the zinc is upregulating heat shock proteins. And the upregulated heat shock proteins then kind of anchors the tight junctions where they need to be. You probably know, I know you know more than I do on this area, so maybe you have some input?
Well, you also had a slide. I think there are different mechanisms, tight junctions. Yeah, upstream maybe heat shock proteins. Yeah, there's been multiple mechanisms attributed to zinc in the gut.
And you could probably answer more on the source too.
Yeah, that one. In this case, I talk about bioavailability, but as JB discussed yesterday, you saw the numbers, so we are talking about relatively high levels of supplementation. So that one is hard to tell, and maybe JB can elaborate. It might be from the safety side of the higher quality sources to, different, but I cannot elaborate more on that one.
No, JB won't comment, I guess, based on the look on his face. Joao, next question is for you. So can I use this camera or AI technique to predict dry matter intake individually within the group pen? Or have you guys done anything on dry matter intake?
Yeah, when I was hired, that was my first attempt, and then I realized that I'm assistant professor in tenure, so I need to leave the difficult problems for later. That's a good point. So there are two basic ways using cameras you're going to do this. You're going to track the feed pile, and then measure the volume of the pile, and if the pile is disappearing, you assume that it's going to a cow, and there are certain ways to do that. Actually, there's a group in Denmark with a system and a few papers proposing that. And the other way, it's using body biometrics. If you have a 3D model of the cow, you know the cow size, you know the cow and this will be related with the requirements of the animal, and you can use also information about the image information from the feed too. To me, that's the better approach. The Denmark approach, the problem, in my opinion, is the validation, because at the freestall, cows eat very close, and tracking how this feed pile disappear, it's difficult. And validating this ideally, you would have to have a scale. That's not going to happen. Or you're going to do this in a feeding being electronic gate, or you have feed piles isolated, distributed, which doesn't represent the freestall. So yeah, you have just two ways, and people trying those two. I like connecting more information, behavior and cow shape, cow size, and ingredient information, and then try to predict intake.
Okay, thanks. So question on more on the ingredients or specialties related to choline and betaine. So which is better to supplement prepartum to mitigate effects on heat stress? So probably for everybody, but I'm looking at you two in the middle.
Well, we just finished a study with choline supplementation in our heat stress model, and the effects of, so it was a 2x2, right? We had heat stress, cooling, choline, no choline for the whole dry period. The animals, we didn't see much of an effect in the cows, except in the cooled cows, we got the typical bump in production from the choline. It did not help to overcome the effects in the heat stress cows. So that would differ from what we saw in the betaine, but again, we didn't have a control for cooling in the betaine study.
Which betaine?
Which type of betaine?
It was a liquid product that we had.
Not protected.
So basically
No.
there are betaine HCl or betaine natural. So which type of betaine? Because
Yeah.
we see in poultry, they have different effects of the both betaine.
Yeah, and I'll go back and look, but it was just sort of natural. It was byproduct betaine.
Lance, you want to weigh in, or are you still thinking?
No, Jeff did a great job. I've not done work with betaine or choline.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking too during your talk, Jeff, like the effects, looking at it factorially with different supplementation strategies with respect to cooling. Like if you could expect to have any additional benefit, of course, cooling already has a huge impact, but if there would be some nutritional strategies to employ to enhance those effects yet.
Yeah, I don't know on the cooling, with the exception of the choline. It's going to vary by supplement. Other ones we've seen that they kind of don't do anything additional with the cooling, but betaine, choline it did. So it's going to vary by supplement, I guess, is the bottom line.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. Victoria, I saw you had your name. Can fecal pH be used as a practical way of regularly measuring gut inflammation, or at least hindgut acidosis? So what do you think?
Yeah, this is a $1 million question. What do we measure? I would say no. Fecal pH is very variable. It's very variable between farms, very variable at the individual level. We can get by doing it in a research setting, because typically we have multiple measurements from the same animal comparing similar conditions. I don't think it would give you any additional information as compared to fecal consistency. You would have to measure it a lot in the same place. I don't think it's practical at the moment with the information we have. And I don't think it gives you additional information as compared to checking feces, consistency, looking for problems in the feces.
Okay. So Joel, next question is for you, following on the subclinical ketosis prediction. So do you think it's possible to use AI on farm to predict the risk for other diseases?
Yes, I'm very biased towards computer vision, so I actually like the name DairyNutriVision. I thank you, David, for... No, I think there is a huge potential. There are several things we have, nowadays at the farm that a smartphone with a picture could help. You guys talking about like FICA score, and we could see a lot that are hyperspectral cameras that have NIR bands on those images, so you could see compounds that you don't see in regular pictures, and I see potential for the disease and for TMR evaluation of ingredients in terms of particle distribution. We are doing some of this work using image. So now that everybody has a phone, you have a lot of low-hanging fruits that you could deploy on those phones, and of course, do also large-scale camera installation. So yeah.
Sure. Okay, good. Let's see, heat stress. So the two in the middle, this one's for you. How long do cows have to be subjected to heat stress before the long-term effects become irreversible? Well, you went first last time.
I did the first one, you know. And I'm just wondering, do they mean dry cows or lactating cows?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? So I think depends on what effect are we talking about. If it's late lactation and they get severe heat stress, they'll just give up,
Yep.
right? So that's pretty irreversible to change. In early lactation, they seem to bounce back quicker. But I think it's this evolutionary.
Mid-lactation, the same thing.
Yeah.
Right, they don't bounce back. They just, and it may be worse then.
Yep.
From our data anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it goes back to her evolutionary drive to make milk, right? If she's severely stressed in mid or late lactation, it's very likely that my calf is going to survive without me. So I'll just give up.
Yeah, and that's probably related to the biology of the mammary gland, because early in lactation, right, it's still plastic, it's still developing, it's still growing and activating, and so later on, we don't have that.
Okay, Lance, this one's for you. It looks like it's a bit of a toughie as well. So the comment here, Lance, too much correlation, not much cause and effect. So the opening statement, if I have to focus, give me 3 main points on which to focus to reduce these diseases on farm.
Yeah, well, my answer is not going to be sexy. It's mostly management, and it is cleanliness, dryness,
Cooling.
and cooling cows. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. No, I just think we gotta keep. Those experiments like in Israel and in Spain where they have common feed centers, so all farms are being fed exactly the same feed, and the huge differences in productivity and other markers of productivity, I think is a good example of mostly management. As long as they're being fed a good diet, right? A lot of variation in productivity is simply management and attention to detail.
Yep. Yeah, in my notes listening to both of you guys, in fact, actually all 4, there's a common theme on the prevention side, right? So if you can be in front of it, you put the cow in such a better position to perform to her natural function than all of the things we try to do after there is a problem.
We can screw more up in the dry period than we can ever fix in lactation.
No.
It's
true.
These really severe environments like Arizona, in the Middle East, there's hot, right? Why can cows be so successful in these environments? I think the environmental pathogen load in them is so low. Yeah, obviously you got to deal with the heat stress, right? You got to deal with the heat stress, but some of the highest producing herds in America come from Arizona, and it's 45 degrees centigrade for 6 months of the year. How can that be? And I think it's because the environmental pathogen load is so low. It's the ground is literally almost sterile or darn near sterile.
And I would just say that when we've looked at pathogen load specifically, because of seasonal differences, right? The idea is that there are differences in exposure. It's more on the cow side than it is on the pathogen side. How they respond is more from the cow's perspective than overloading them with pathogens. But I think that the dry, sort of low humidity, is probably a part of the positive in those environments.
Okay, you got more?
No, I was just looking for Jason with drilled. The consultants that are working in the arid environments of the Middle East and Arizona, right? Oftentimes when they have a problem, a transition period problem like milk fever, Arizona milk fever doesn't exist except for when the rainy season shows up, right? Which happens in January and in a little bit of July. The rainy season shows up, now we'll start popping up with milk fevers every now and then. And I think that is an environmental pathogen load issue.
No. Okay. Victoria, next question's for you. Prebiotic is good to feed bugs. What are the advantages to give prebiotics such as gluconic acid rather than providing something like butyric acid directly?
Yeah, good question. It's a very different approach. I didn't emphasize how much of this prebiotic we're giving. It's 16 grams of the product, half of that more or less is the fat. So we're giving a very small amount. It's a very small signal that it's truly feeding in the bugs, and then the bugs are doing the job of making a better environment, producing VFAs. We talk about the VFAs because it's something relatively easy to measure, but probably they're doing another 1,000 things to improve the gut health. So it's more of a homeostasis of the ecology of the gut. When we give butyrate, we're definitely getting more butyrate to the gut. In part, this is going to be used as substrate. What we're doing with the prebiotic, we are not attempting to feed enterocytes. We're not producing enough butyrate. It's really signaling mechanisms. When we feed butyrate, we feed enough to make this a substrate for enterocytes. I think from a balance point of view, you might overwhelm a little bit the system in terms of signaling when you feed the butyrate. But it's very different approaches. You're aiming at improving health with both, but through different mechanisms. So they're not comparable.
Okay, thanks. Next question, Jeff, is for you. So for the offspring that have been negatively impacted by heat stress in the dam, is it possible to correct that, or in how many generations would it take to eliminate those perhaps negative effects?
I don't think it's possible to correct it. I think that what we're seeing is sort of the range of genetic potential expression. Right? We're not changing them genetically in terms of genetic potential, but what we're doing is shifting them to the lower side of expression. And I don't think we can overcome that ever. That's going to be there. We've established that now. And that's why we have a range, right? You have cows that have high genetic potential, but they don't all express it the same way. And that's what we're seeing is that kind of moderation of that expression.
So yeah, I wonder how much that persists in an average herd. Like how much average production or health or all these different parameters are compromised for things that we now know a little bit more about. But
right,
what's
but there's
that?
a lot still to figure out. From an epigenetics standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Debbie has taken away all of the questions, which means the time is almost up. So a round of applause for our speakers again.